Welcome to the Collective Genius Podcast, the show for real estate investors who are looking to scale.
Welcome back into the Collective Genius Podcast, the podcast for real estate investors that want to grow and scale their businesses. I am your host, as always, Leon Barnes. And today, for the first time ever, I have a guest from outside of our membership, but is definitely CG family after being our keynote speaker at our June event. Please welcome in Mr. Alan Stein Jr. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's so great to be with you.
I'm so thankful to have you on. I can show you, for those that are listening, I am showing up my notes here on YouTube. All of the notes that I took from your keynote. There are several of these type of notebooks that I have, and I can look back through them. I've taken some notes from keynotes. Every keynote I've taken some notes from, because you can learn from anyone. But yours in particular resonated with me as a former athlete, as someone that still plays sports at my age. Probably shouldn't, but I do. We'll get into that. But it really resonated with me. So let's start by telling everyone what it is that you do. Because again, you're not a real estate investor, but you're someone that did speak to a bunch of real estate investors with a sports background in relating the two of sports and business.
Well, my official title is corporate keynote speaker and author, but the moniker I most resonate with is coach. I think coaching has always been in my blood. You know, that's why you're my favorite type of audience, because you share the love of basketball and for really high-end Jordan sneakers that I do. Right. But coaching and helping people reach a level of performance, helping people reach a new mindset, helping people reach a new level of productivity that they don't believe they can reach on their own is really what I do as a coach. I did that for the first portion of my career as a basketball performance coach, and I helped players improve their physical capacity for work on the court, as well as their mental approach to the game. And after doing that for just under 20 years, I decided to pivot away from working directly with basketball players and move into the corporate space and work with folks just like you and the rest of the Collective Genius so that they can do the same types of things.
So, Alan, help me with this, because there are a lot of us that played sports and still coach kids' sports that look at your career of working with, athletes like KD and Curry and Kobe, just to name a few. Perhaps you may have heard of some of those athletes. One would see on the outside thinking, man, he's living the dream of a lot of guys that you're being paid to work with professionals. You talk a lot about passion in your books, and you talk a lot about passion in your keynote. What made you make that transition after 20 years?
To be honest, I was just ready for a change. Even though the names that you just mentioned were guys I had a chance to work with and work for and work alongside, the overwhelming majority of my work at that time was with middle school and high school age players. Now, granted, I was able to work at two very renowned high schools that produced future NBA players. So these weren't your typical average normal high schools. But most of my work was with 15 to 16 to 17-year-old young men that had the goal of playing at the highest level. And while I certainly relished the opportunity to work with them and build relationships and be a role model for them, I started to get burnt out on the training aspect. People were hiring me to make players bigger, faster, and stronger. So I was spending most of my time in weight rooms and on the court. And I started to get burnt out on that. My own fascination and curiosity started to lead in other directions, like leadership and communication and mindset and building cohesive teams. So for me, I realized that portion of my career had kind of run its course, and it was time for me to find a new audience and a new way to kind of share these disciplines and routines and rituals that I had learned.
Did you know that it would be a keynote speaker? Did you know that being a speaker at corporations, you didn't know that the route is the route that you wanted to go?
I didn't know that definitively, but that seed had been planted, and it had been planted about 10 years before I actually made the move. There was a gentleman named Walter Bond, who's still a very renowned keynote speaker in the corporate space. And I was working an event for the NBA Players Association, and they brought Walter in to speak. And I just remember being mesmerized by him. He was a brilliant storyteller. He was charismatic. He was funny, but he really made me think. And I just remember sitting there that day thinking, one day I would love to do that. I don't want to do it right now. I'm loving what I'm doing at present, but one day I might want to try that. So when I started experiencing these early signs of burnout and I started to realize that I needed to make a shift, that seed started to bloom. And that's when I realized, all right, now's the time to try that. So moving from basketball performance coach to corporate keynote speaker was my calling. It was the only thing on my mind at that time, but that seed had been planted a decade earlier.
So this is something that I took directly from your Your Game book. To quote you here, the link between sports and the business world is a natural one. This is something that I've been saying for a very long time in the business world, both corporate and then into real estate. I have always had success hiring, especially managers and high performance salespeople that were former athletes. And I will never leave out also the arts. My wife is a former contemporary professional dancer. Her discipline, honestly, was better than some of the athletes that I've worked with myself. I know that link is natural because I lived in both worlds. You didn't come from a business background, correct?
That is correct.
So how did you bridge that? I mean, to be able to take the principles that you were doing with high performance training and relate that on a stage to a bunch of suits, that's not a natural transition.
No, it's not. And I had several close friends, specifically from high school and college that chose to go the business route, after their education. And those were folks that I reached out to immediately when I considered making this leap. And ask them, you're in the business world, and it was a wide swath of different industries. They had different roles, so it was a pretty nice sample size. And I leaned on them and asked them, what are your biggest challenges? What are your biggest pain points? What are the things that if you had a magic wand, you'd love to be able to fix right now? And every single one of them mentioned traits that I was very confident I could add value to improving based on my time in sport. And because I've been in sports my entire life, I've just seen through my own life experiences that these qualities have very high utility. I often talk about basketball and business because those are the two worlds I've played in, and for the alliteration of the B and the B. But as you just mentioned, they apply to the arts. I have several friends who have made careers in the armed forces and the military. This stuff applies there. As a father myself, I know how much it applies to parenting. To me, the stuff that I try and share on stage and on page has such high utility that we can apply these to really every area of our life. And I encourage folks to do so. The stuff that I shared with you all at Collective Genius, certainly what brought me there was the business component and sharing things that I would hope would help folks in their business lives. But I also hope they help the folks in their personal lives, their relationship with their children, relationship with their spouses and significant other, relationship with their members of their community and their teammates. So this stuff that I talk about, I apply to every single area of my life. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this work.
So there are a couple different things that I want to, a couple different paths I want to go down here. First, I want to talk about the Raise Your Game book. As I was reading the book, what I loved about it, again, there are a lot of people that I'm surprised, Alan, not going to lie. When I first got into the entrepreneurship side of business, I was blown away on how many entrepreneurs never played sports or did not follow them. You talk to, there's over 500 members within the Collective Genius. I bet you half of them do not follow sports at all. Like if you talk to them about an athlete, they wouldn't know. What I love about the book is for the individual that is looking to raise the level of their teams, the performance of the players, the book goes specifically into the 3 tiers that every business needs help with. And it's analogized, and the metaphor is sports, obviously, but it's the player, the coach, and the team, which boils down to the employee, the management, the executive team, and overall the organization as a whole. Can you speak more to how because it's not coming from the business world, and to establish that, you hit that right out of the gates, and I thought it was spot on.
Oh, well, thank you so much. For me, when I'm speaking to an audience or someone's reading my book that does have a sports background, that's easy for me. That's fish in a barrel. What I really take a lot of pride in is being able to transfer these messages and these high utility principles and share them with folks that don't share my passion for sport, or specifically don't share my passion for basketball. So I have to find other ways to make those connections and use those analogies. And while basketball has been my passion and where I've derived most of my personal experience, I always want to make sure that I can bridge the gap so that folks understand that you don't have to love sport or come from sport or even like basketball for these principles to work. And that's really helped sharpen me as a communicator, as a teacher, as a coach, is being able to transfer that passion that I have to something that they're very passionate about, and to make those different connections. And at the end of the day, whether you like sport or not, we all kind of ebb and flow through these different areas of our lives. And at some point, every one of us is going to be the player or be the employee. Every one of us is going to be the coach or going to be the management. And every one of us is a part of some type of team. Even if you're a solopreneur and you're in business for yourself, you most likely still have other people that make the engine go. You most likely have an attorney or an accountant or a bookkeeper or a personal assistant. Like, no one lives their life in complete isolation, and no one builds success in a silo. We can also take that to the family. You may be an employee at work, but you are the head of your household. You are the CEO, or if you're married, you're the co-CEO of your family. And that family is a team, no different than, the San Antonio Spurs are a team and Google is a team. Now, they're all teams of varying sizes, but they're all a collection of individuals working together towards a common goal. So for me, that was the way I wanted to lay the book out, was to just say that we're going to ebb and flow and through all of these 3 different components. So let's find ways to raise the level of our performance and output in each of them.
I want to go through each speaking topic that you cover, for those business owners that right now that are listening to this, that, are looking at, how do I bring someone like Alan in to help my organization? But before I get there, when you're coming off of stage, and this will lead us into the topics, when you're coming off of stage and you're sitting in the back and people come up to you afterwards at a meet and greet, what have you, what is it that you hear the most from your speeches from the main stage, where people say, this is exactly what I needed to hear, this particular segment? Is there one that stands out more than others?
The one that I think is the stickiest, that I get the most, is the concept of next play, which is actually, I've just written my 3rd book, which will be out in November. And the whole book is about this concept. And that was the reason I chose to write it, was that's probably the red thread that I hear the most from folks, is how helpful the reframe of just focusing on the next play is. Now, of course, having read the book and having heard me speak, next play is kind of derivative of being in the present moment. It has components of just focusing on what you control. Like, next play might be the center of the bullseye, but there's all of the concentric circles around it that it's still involved with. But next play really epitomizes the mindset shift that I've made in my life that's had the biggest impact. And it's definitely one of the stickiest, most tangible things that folks share. And one of my favorite compliments to get, certainly I love when someone says that they found what I shared to be helpful or useful. But when they say that they're going to share it with a loved one, when someone says, I can't wait to tell my teenage son about next play, or I can't wait to go home and tell my husband about this story that you shared about accountability, that's my favorite compliment. When someone finds something impactful enough that they want to share it with someone they truly care about, then I know I hit the mark, at least for that person.
Well, I know I wrote it down not once, but twice, actually 3 times. The first time when I found out you were going to be speaking here, our team that does brings in all of our keynotes at every quarter mentioned your name. I obviously did the research, watched your pod with Ed Milet. And from that, I wrote immediately the 3 things you talked about with focus. The next play, focus on controlling the controllables, and focus on the process. Yeah. And as I'm writing that down each time, read the book, and then in my notes from your keynote, I find that if I write things down multiple times, it's what I needed to focus on the most myself. Growing up in basketball myself, I know that's if you have a great coach growing up or multiple coaches, there's a common thread there because there's so many plays in any basketball game that you have to focus on the next thing. Worrying about what happened before doesn't help you on that next play. In fact, hurts you if you're still worried about the shot that you missed on that last possession. We got to get down the court and play defense. And it translates so well in business because there are things that happen that we can only control. I'll give you the real estate investment side of things right now. From 2019 to the first quarter of 22, Alan, the market was the star, right? It wasn't, not everyone that was in this business was Kobe Bryant, but they looked like Kobe Bryant because the market was the star, right? Now, the market has changed, and it's really, quite frankly, Alan, it's normalized. The young bucks that got in this business 3 to 5 years ago, they lived in the land of milk and honey. Now, they actually have to do the work and be the star, and they're focused on what was versus what is now. And the veterans that have been through these type of market cycles understand that they have to take what the defense, or in this particular case, take what the market gives them. And it was really good for the timing of this because, again, the market's not bad. It's just the pie is smaller than it was in 21 and 2020, right? It's just smaller. There's still pie to be eaten. You just have to go and make sure that you get your fair share or the bigger slice by doing the work. And so focus, if there's a difference, and you know this with athletes as well, if there's a difference between the haves and the have-nots or our levels, we have 4 different tiers, as you well know. You spoke to both our premier and CEO level groups. When speaking to that level group, the biggest difference that I see is time and precision on the focus side and execution. Those 3 things really boil down the difference between the people that are the high-level professionals versus the mid-tier and bottom tier. That's it. It's just focus. Control the controllables and focus on the next play.
Oh, I love that. And you know what's cool? I think that would apply to almost any other vocation or industry as far as what separates the good from the great, or even the great from the exceptional. And I love that you're able to bring up that things like market conditions and the economy, those external factors do play a role in how hard our jobs are, especially if you're in real estate, but we don't have any control over those factors. So that can't be where our focus lies. No one, I mean, obviously, as you said, from that period where things was all milk and honey, you could be very average at your real estate acumen and still do very well in those conditions. Now the tables have turned a little bit, but it's all relative. But for me, the reason next play is so powerful, we tend to focus on next play as far as getting over a mistake in the micro. And I do think that's where it's most applicable. And I know in my own life, that's where it's been most helpful. But there's a few other areas where we can apply next play. One, which we rarely talk about, is we also want to focus on the next play when things go really well. When you hit the big 3-point shot, do you spend 10 minutes dancing around and shimmying, celebrating, or do you still have a quick wink and you get back on defense. Like, we can't spend too much time celebrating the past either. We have to be able to move on to the next play. Now, I do believe in celebrating wins. I do believe in having appreciation and gratitude when things go well, but we can't live there either, or we'll start to be complacent. But I also like looking at next play in the macro, and I view next play as nothing more than our ability to handle transition. Once again, I know I'm speaking to a fellow basketball aficionado, but in basketball, obviously, we talk a lot about offense and defense. But what we don't talk a lot about is the transition between the two, because basketball is an incredibly fast-paced game, and how quickly you can transition from being on offense to being on defense, or vice versa, will dictate how well you'll be in either one of those domains. And in our lives, we go through so many different transitions. We go from living at home with our parents to living out on our own. We go from being single to being married. We go from not having kids to having kids. We go from sometimes being healthy to not being healthy. We go from having, parents that are healthy to not being healthy. We sometimes experience divorce. We sometimes experience being laid off. Sometimes we experience really adverse market conditions, which affect. So there's all of these transitions, and next play also is a way for us to reframe and go, okay, I used to be in this area of life. I've now transitioned to this area of life. How can I now recalibrate and refocus the lens to be the best I'm capable of under these new circumstances? And so looking at it in the micro and the macro is incredibly important, but it's always about this concept of always becoming. And no matter where you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what's on your plate next, that you're still striving for excellence as you continue to move forward.
Love that. My goodness. What a soundbite that is, my friend. Thank you for that. There's three things that I was thinking of there, and I'm kind of smiling as you're saying it because I'm like, this is such gold. But in my head, three things. The first one isn't as funny. The first one is just something that I've mentioned on the pod before. But, when Teddy Roosevelt passed away, former president, on his dying bed, underneath when they picked him up to take him out of the room, underneath his bed was a book, or underneath his pillow was a book. I mean, on his deathbed, he was still learning and still reading, like always looking to grow, right? Always educating yourself at a level of growth, right? Excellence, pursuing excellence. That's the first thing that came to my mind. The other two things that came to my mind, as a basketball nerd, and this is how big of a basketball nerd I am, Alan. After watching the NBA Summer League, I went right into the basketball tournament, TBT, the old tournament that is for $1 million. For those that are not familiar, there's a bunch of basically former college athletes and former and current pros overseas that play in this tournament to win $1 million. And I was watching it last night, and as you talked about the celebration, it's such a great point. When you were talking about the celebration and how you have to move on to the next play, we always think about the bad things. That's over. I'm going to move on to the next thing. But it is so true. Like, I saw this guy celebrating so much that the transition on the other side totally gave up. His guy went down. He just eliminated all the good that he did. We're now back at even because he hit a three and the guy running down the court just hit a three. I'm like, you just gave up exactly what you're celebrating. So we're back at even here. So it doesn't, all the celebrate in the world, move on to the next play so we can continue, hopefully, to make progression to winning the game and trusting the process of the game plan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Such a basketball nerd. Eric Brewer and I quite often text. There's a couple of us that are texting going, hey, there's TBT, because we miss basketball so much in the summertime. That's the only thing that's on.
And it's some high quality basketball. I'll say both Summer League and TBT are what help guys like us get our fix during the summer months.
Yeah. And, again, I take away, I'm always trying to take away something from anything that, whether it's a book or something that I'm watching. There's so many good things here. Alan, I want to make sure that we talk about your speaking topics. Now, some of these may change. This is what I pulled directly from your website. There were 5 different ones on there. Do you mind if we share some of those of what you speak on?
No, I would love that. That's fine.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So the first topic is raising your game, maximizing performance, productivity, results. That's one of your themes. I know that you do cater as well. Let's talk about that particular theme and what you offer in that keynote.
That's really my signature keynote. That's at least the epicenter of what most groups bring me in for. And that is, how do we get every member of our team to show up as the best version of themselves? So, I can kind of give you an overview of all of them. I mean, raise your game is about how do we elevate each individual team member. Raise their game is how can I teach leaders how to have more influence and impact over those that they lead. So that's lots of times when I'm working with managers or directors or supervisors or C-suite executives. So that one's more focused on how can I teach you how to raise the game of the people you work with. Then raise our game is kind of collective. What do we need to do together to be a more cohesive unit, to have better collaboration and communication to improve our culture? Then raise your sales is kind of a combination of them, but it's more directed at specifically the craft of selling. And then sustain your game, which is based after my second book, is really once we've done these things, once we've elevated our performance, not that we ever reach the apex of the mountain, but once we've got a grip on what we need to do to start working towards excellence, how can we sustain that for long periods of time? And many groups, Collective Genius being one of them, I touched on a few of those different things. I'm going to touch, the bullseye might be how does each person individually become their best selves. But we're going to talk a little bit about leadership, and we're going to talk a little bit about, organizational excellence as well. So most groups want me to do a little bit of a collage of each of those. And then when I do my pre-event exploratory call, they kind of let me know what's the main goal or the main theme, who the audience is, so that I can custom build the right portions of each of those. Some groups say, hey, we want you to talk mostly about this, but if you can sprinkle in a little bit of this and a little bit of that, that would be helpful. So I want every presentation I give to feel very customized. Nothing really just comes out of the can.
You mentioned that you're working or you just completed your third book. You speak a little bit about that. What's the title of it? And or if you can give that up.
I sure can. Well, the book is about Next Play, the whole book, and that's the actual title is Next Play. And I'm really excited because I'm building a brand new keynote around it as well. And in addition to my love for basketball, I also have a really strong love for stand-up comedy. Certainly like anyone else, I like to laugh and I like to be entertained. Sure. I've always been fascinated by the specific craft of stand-up comedy. And I watch hours and hours of it, not only for my enjoyment, but to hopefully improve my craft as a speaker, because stand-up comedians understand how important timing is and rhythm and so forth. But one of the things I admire about many stand-up comedians is they work on material with the goal of refining it to the point where they can record a Netflix special. Back in my day, in our day, it was an HBO special or a Comedy Central special. But they were kind of working towards this big crescendo of when they were going to, kind of have that material mastered. And then once they did that special, they would throw out all of that material and they would start over and they would start building a new routine and a new hour with all brand new jokes. And they would spend months in the clubs workshopping and working on material. And then the following year, that material would become a Netflix special. And many of the comedians today kind of follow that recipe. For me, I'm taking the same approach that with Next Play, it's going to be a brand new keynote. I'm not going to use any of the stories or lessons or stats that I've used in my other keynotes. It's all going to be fresh, new content, which I'm excited about. But also, it gets the nerves going a little bit. I've hung my hat on some of these signature stories and lessons, and some of this material I've rehearsed and practiced so many times that I've got it down pretty good. It's almost like I'm going back to being a rookie again. I'm going back to being a freshman. I'm going to have to learn how to fly again by doing all new material. And while I'm certainly going to rehearse it and practice it before I give that talk for the very first time, but I'm also aware that it'll take a couple of months of me being in front of live audiences to really refine it and workshop it and move some things around until I feel really good about it. But it's given me this new excitement. Not that I'm not excited to give my current keynotes, but to know that I've got to hold myself to the fire and come out with brand new material, I'm super excited about. So yeah, the next play will be a book and a keynote, and it'll be available in early November.
Can't wait to read it. Can't wait to see that keynote. It's so fascinating that you chose stand-up comedy, because it is the platform skills that you offer. Clearly, it comes from the confidence of the material. It's ironic, right? That relates to sports, right? The people that don't get nervous, like you worked with and beside Kobe, who would often talk about he did all of the work in practice, and the games were easy because of how much work he would put in practice. I'm fascinated too by how a comedian can take this almost perfect stand-up routine and just say, all right, no one wants to see that ever again. That's now done. It's like a book that I've written and I'm moving on to the next thing. Actually, I'm with you. I enjoy, especially going in and seeing it in person. And probably 6 months ago, I went to see Joe Coy, well-known comedian, does a lot of Netflix specials. And out of the gates, and you'll probably feel some of this as well. I'm sure you felt some of this when you were doing each of your keynotes. But Joe Coy came out on stage. He had the entire arena here in Tampa sold out, and he had just come off of a Netflix special, and he was working his routine. And I remember him coming out, and all of us looking at each other like he is coming out here like he's got nothing. In fact, he said, "Hey guys, working on some new stuff here. Going to ask you to be patient with me." And he delivered, but out of the gates, he was just very open and honest of going, this is you see the craft. I know you pay for your ticket and I will work through it. But this is new material. And as I'm listening to you say that as a 48-year-old man, I think a lot of us, especially in our 40s, get to a point where you hear of people buying cars and things like that in the midlife crisis. But I think what you just gave, Alan, and for a lot of people that are listening to this, what you just gave, in my opinion, is the secret to making sure that you don't get into that crisis, is doing things that make you uncomfortable so you're still growing. And that's exactly what you're doing with writing another book and going out and getting the reps underneath you to do something new that gives you should be doing things still in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s that make you a little nervous.
Absolutely. And that nervousness can quickly translate into excitement. Like it's relit me, but I also realized too, because I've put that out there now, at the time of this recording, the book has already been written. The audio book has already been recorded. I should actually have some printed copies shipped to me within the next couple of weeks, even though the book's not going to launch until November 1st. So my next part of the process is actually building out and writing the keynote, because I'm not going to just kind of take a couple of things out of the book.
Sure.
And it's not going to be in the exact same sequential order as the book. In fact, one of the things I plan to talk about on stage is this injury that I got at the Coach K fantasy camp. So I'm going to build the keynote, but I'm so excited to do that. And when you take like I've been giving portions of my current keynote and telling some of those stories for years now, and I've done them hundreds of times. And at the risk of sounding like I lack humility, I've gotten pretty good at those only because I've gotten in the reps. Well, I don't want that to be something I just ride out for the next 2 decades. I don't want to be telling the exact same Kobe Bryant story for the next 30 years. Like I've squeezed about as much juice out of that story as one could get. And whilst many people still haven't heard it because I'm not famous, I'm not a household name, I will continue to tell it to new audiences and people that need that lesson. But I'm really excited to take the training wheels off and try something brand new. One of the reasons I'm excited is I have so many really solid relationships with previous clients and previous organizations. And I do believe this will be an opportunity for me to revisit some groups that I spoke to 2 or 3 years ago, because they're going to want something new. They're going to say, hey, our team already heard your first song and dance and they loved it, but we don't need to bring you back to repeat that.
Sure.
But if you've got something new, now I can go back and I can reestablish connections and relationships with groups that I find very meaningful and people that I love to work with. just like the collective genius. So it's also going to be a gateway to rekindle some of those relationships. But for me, I'm not going to go as far as to say every year I'll write a new book and every year I'll have a new keynote the same way Joe Coy does with a Netflix special. But now I know that at least every couple of years, I should be growing at the rate that I have something new to say. And if for any reason I don't, then I need to look in the mirror and ask, why not? Am I getting too comfortable with what I'm currently sharing in my current framework? It's time to push the envelope and do some new stuff.
That's exactly why we had you at our meeting. People, as I started out this pod, our members are real estate entrepreneurs. They're not just investors, side hustle. They are entrepreneurs that run businesses, that have full teams, and they are continuing to grow and scale. That's why they are here. They don't want to just sit on what they're currently doing. They want to continue to scale their business and continue to grow. The keynote was exactly what we were looking for at that given time. I would be doing this audience, especially the YouTube audience, a disservice if we let you get out of here without having a conversation about that elbow. You did mention it a little bit, but you got to tell the story, because I love, again, from a personal side, how you're pushing yourself and doing some fun stuff while pushing yourself. Will you tell the people the story about what happened to your elbow there?
I sure will. Well, for a little additional context, which I know you know, and anyone that was at my keynote, I'm a longtime Duke basketball fan, and more appropriately, I'm a longtime Coach K fan. Funny enough, what many people don't know is I actually grew up a Tar Heel fan. I grew up a big Dean Smith fan, and what changed for me, and it's not that I still like UNC and I still have nothing but reverence and respect for Dean Smith and his legacy. But when I read Coach K's book, Leading with the Heart, in the late 1990s, early 2000s, it changed everything as far as how I viewed leadership, how I viewed teamwork and building winning teams. And ever since reading that book, which I've since read probably a dozen times, I immediately became a Coach K fan. Well, as a basketball fan and as a Coach K fan and someone who still tries to challenge himself physically, as an early 50th birthday present to myself, I'll be turning 50 this coming January, I decided to buy myself a ticket to the K Academy, which is a fantasy camp that Coach K runs down at Duke University. And I spent 6 months in major preparation mode. I was training and playing and shooting and playing pickup, and even hired a basketball trainer. Like, I went all in so that I could show up at this camp as the best version of myself on and off the court, and was so excited for it. This has been something I've been looking forward to for almost a decade, and finally decided to pull the trigger and attend camp. And on the first day, shattered my elbow. And 6 days later, I had to have surgery to reattach the tricep tendon because the tricep came off of the bone. So certainly a devastating injury, and not my preference by any means. I will say that despite the injury, that camp was still one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. While I didn't get to play on the court, I still got to be there and cheer my teammates on and attend all of the functions of the camp. Had several amazing conversations with Coach K. And there's an old adage, they say, never meet your heroes. Well, I'm proud to report that is not true in this case. Meeting Coach K, and I've met him several times over the last 20 years, but spending some time with him at his camp, I mean, he is exceeded every expectation I could have had. The day I got home from camp, he called me to make sure I got home safely. The day after my surgery, he called again to make sure surgery went well. A week after that, I got a handwritten note from him just saying, I hope everything's going well, and I hope to see you at camp next year. So he's living proof of those types of principles of leadership and communication that I preach and teach on stage. And this has been a really interesting learning experience for me, being off the shelf of my normal routine, which consisted of a lot of weightlifting and playing basketball, and not being able to do that for a couple of months, having to do everything in my life with my non-dominant hand, from bathing to cooking to eating to brushing my teeth. And one of the things it taught me was, when you don't have any choice and you're fully immersed, you can learn things very quickly. The first couple of days of even brushing my teeth with my left hand were pretty comical, but now I'm really good at it. In fact, I can brush my teeth and I can eat with my left hand just as good as I can with my right. So I'm somewhat ambidextrous in that regard. So I've learned some really good lessons from this. And the most important one is, I would never in a million years have chosen to break my elbow. That would have never been my preference. However, once it happened and I was able to quickly reframe and move to the next play, there have been so many cool experiences from this that I never would have had it not happened. So I do believe that with every adversity and every challenge, there is a lesson and an opportunity. You just have to look for it. And I also know that in the broad scheme of life, a minor elbow injury is not that big of a deal. Like, I am so eternally grateful that things could always be way worse and way more adverse. So I'm also leaning into this with a lot of gratefulness and thankfulness.
Challenge equals opportunity. It is defined in next play, my friend. Next play. You did that, and what is the good that can come from this? You're now left-handed. That's the benefit of this. I appreciate you playing hurt, because you came to do our keynote a few days after this happened.
Yeah, 48 hours after surgery, which was interesting because I remember my agent and the speaker bureau reached out immediately and said, "Alan, are we going to need to cancel?" And I said, "No, I'm confident I can do this." And they said, "Well, how do you know? You've never had surgery before?" And I said, "Well, I don't know,
Right.
but I'm confident that I'll make it happen." And same thing, when you make a commitment and you put yourself out there, you're more likely to get it done. And now, in full transparency, if I did not believe that I would be able to show up and deliver for you all the way that I had promised, I would have stepped aside and allowed them to put in a substitution, if you will, because I would never want you guys or your audience or collective genius to have suffered because I overcommitted myself. But I had full optimism and full belief that I would be fine. I checked with my surgeon and asked, would it be appropriate for me to travel and to speak? And he said, yeah, as long as you don't mind the inconvenience of only having one arm, like, you'll be fine, as far as your mental acuity. So I checked all of the boxes. There was nothing about that decision that was reckless or unprofessional. But I needed to do it. And I was so looking forward to meeting you guys in person and being there. Selfishly, I didn't want to give that up either.
Well, we were looking forward to playing ball with you on our morning basketball, but we were more than satisfied. You rocked it on the main stage. You weren't as animated as you probably usually are, at least with the right. Last thing I have here before I get you out of here, I think it's super important that I always live by the mantra of little things equal big things. And you focused a lot, and I was surprised because, his next play, there's so many good things about it, but you made it a point, especially towards the end, to thank, everyone that made it possible, from the production crew, the lessons that you mentioned, the Coach K letter that you showed, Coach K checking up on you. I think of Coach K when it comes to that. I think Bill Snyder, the legendary coach from the Kansas State football, was legendary at sending, not only winning, but also legendary at thinking of others and sending personal notes to the opposing team even. That was a big part of your speech. Is that something that is just you personally, or something that you've learned along the way?
Oh, it's the fabric of what I believe and what I preach and teach. And I love that, there's so many derivatives of the quote that you just shared. Little things make a big difference. Little hinges swing big doors. I'm actually of the belief, and I think this might have been a John Woodenism, and you can probably confirm since you're a basketball guy. I think John Wooden said something to the effect of, there are no big things. There's only an accumulation of little things, which means if you want to be your best in the big moments when the stakes are high, well, that's just going to be an accumulation of being really excellent in all of the little moments that lead up to that. And it's also been my experience that we have way more control over the little moments of the day-to-day, of the daily disciplines and mindsets and rituals that we can put into that will allow us, to perform at a high level when the lights are really bright and the cameras are on. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that, which is why at the core of everything I teach and everything I believe is about getting back to the basics, focusing on the fundamentals, untethering from the unnecessarily complex, and as the sign above my head says, simplifying success. To me, that should be all of our goal. And the way I apply that in my own life is I look at every single area of my life that I aim to be excellent. Certainly I want to be an excellent keynote speaker and an excellent podcast guest, and I want to be an excellent author, but I want to be an excellent father. I want to be an excellent business owner. I want to be someone who is of excellent mental and physical health. So I look at each of those areas and I break it down to what are the fundamentals. The fundamentals of the game of basketball, as you know so well, are shooting, passing, rebounding, defending, and handling the ball. Those are the 5 primary skill sets. Now, obviously, you need some basketball IQ to know how and when to use those things. And you need to be coachable and you need to be a good teammate to raise the level of everyone else. But at the end of the day, it's primarily just those 5 skill sets. Well, I try and look at every area. What are the 5 basic building blocks of being a really good keynote speaker? What are the 5 building blocks of being a really impactful father to my children? And whatever the answer to those are, I work on those little things every single day. And I figure if I can get good at those basic fundamentals, then it'll only raise my performance and productivity in each of those areas. So I'm working towards mastery of the basics. And the key word in that sentence is working towards, because I'm not a master of any of it yet, but I'm definitely making progress. And in each of the areas of my life that I strive for excellence, I can say with a huge smile, I am better today than I've been at any other previous time in my life. And for that, I'm so grateful.
Next play, best version of yourself is today. I use that reference and I'll let those read your book as well as bring you out as a keynote to hear. I won't give all of it away, but the Queens College example that you gave, I love that one. I use it not only for my travel basketball team, but I use it in talking to real estate investors that I'm potentially looking at bringing into the Collective Genius, but also those current members. I look at success leaves breadcrumbs. And the breadcrumbs that I've seen, especially within this group for the last 7 years, is that what you said in your keynote that you got from Kobe, which is never get bored with the basics. And those basics are defined, right? What are the key performance indicators that allow for businesses to be sustain success over time? And it really only boils down to a few things, as you said. And every business has them. What are the things that drive revenue and drive the culture and drive your purpose? You focus on those things and get really, really good at those things. And then you can move on to whatever is else that you want to add on to it. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that piece of it, everyone is always, especially in a community like ours, Alan, everyone wants to come in and get the magic bullet. And there are always a small percentage that come in and say, I thought this was going to be a magic bullet, but the reality is it's just detailed work that I have to consistently do with precision and trust the process. If I focus on these things that are the most important, I'll get the most squeeze from the fruit, or the most juice from the squeeze.
Absolutely. So well said. I mean, to me, that was when I finally, and I'm a little late to the party. It took almost 40 years for me to come to this very obvious conclusion, but that is we don't control outcomes, but we do have much more control over the process. I mean, even in the game of basketball, we don't control whether the ball goes in the basket or not. If I had 100% control over whether the ball went in the basket, then I'd be shooting 100% for my entire career, because I never shot a shot that I didn't try to make or didn't want to make. So we don't control whether the ball goes in the basket. You know what we do control? Whether we're on balance, whether we use proper form, whether we're in range, whether we're in rhythm, whether this is a good shot for us based on our skill set, whether or not we've practiced it. So if I can have good footwork and shooting mechanics, and it's a good shot for me, and I'm in rhythm, and it's appropriate to time and score, I greatly increase the chance that the shot will go in. So I don't control the outcome, but the process is something that is mostly within my control. So for me, I am so process-centered in everything that I do. And that shift has really been helpful. And I still have preferred desired outcomes. Like, I still want the ball to go into the basket,
Sure.
but I can sleep at night if I know, hey, I missed that shot, but it was a good shot to take, and I shot it the correct way. You know, it was the right way to shoot the ball. And that's true with everything else.
So much wisdom. I appreciate your time. If someone is looking to bring you in as a keynote, I know the website is Alan Stein Jr. That's Stein, and Alan is Alan. For those that are looking at the website, Alan Stein Jr. is the website. Is that where they go if they are interested in bringing you in as a corporate keynote speaker?
Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm very easily found and very accessible and very responsive on social media. So I'm also just at Alan Stein Jr., Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and very responsive. So just shoot me a DM if anyone wants to keep this conversation going or ask a question. But certainly if I can ever be of value in any way, shape, or form to anyone watching or listening, would love to do it.
I can stamp this on a couple different ways here. Number one, Alan is great to work with, and I can stamp the CG approval as a keynote speaker, but one of the best at listening to our needs and catering his presentation for what we ask for specifically. We have had Alan in the past where we've had a keynote, a pre-meeting conversation, and just say, you know what, this is not the right fit because this person is not willing to kind of mold their presentation for what it is that we're looking. And that's fair to them, but it's also fair for us to say that's not going to work for us. You didn't hesitate. It worked exactly for what we were looking for. You performed even after surgery, and you've been great to work with pre as well as post. To my next point, which is we have a couple of gifts to be able to give away. Autograph copies. I sent these to Alan. He autographed them and sent them back on his own dime. He is so easy and great to work with. And so I will back that up that, if you're someone that is looking to book, he's got our stamp of approval here at the Collective Genius. If you're, a business and you want to bring Alan into your regional meetup, we have a lot of members, Alan, that have big, massive meetups in New Jersey and California and Texas and some of these other areas. And so, in fact, I've had some conversations with some of them about bringing you in potentially. So what we have here for you, the audience, the listening audience, is I have 3 autographed copies of Raise Your Game. Alan thankfully signed those for us, graciously signed them for us. We're going to give those away. The easiest way to get those is you're going to just DM me the word Raise Your Game. The first 3 that do that, we'll make sure that we get these copies out to you. Raise Your Game. I'll need obviously your name and your address to send it to, but we'll get those out to you. Alan, I couldn't thank you more for your time as well as signing these books for us that we'll be able to get out to everyone, or the 3 that DM me. Those Raise Your Game and give me your information. Alan, anything else that you want to share with the audience?
No, man, this was so much fun. It is so great to reconnect with you. I've been excited for this conversation ever since we put it on the calendar. I hope that we both connect again in the same place when we're both able-bodied, because I absolutely want to play hoops. I just haven't decided if I want to play against you and see how you and I go head to head. I kind of think I want to be on your team so you and I can run the table and you never went off the court.
I promise you want to be on my team at this age. Let's do it, Bryant. At this age, I enjoy setting people up to score more so than I do scoring anymore. And I will say this, maybe I've got 2 years, less than 2 years to 50. I like the Coach K thing at 50. Maybe I'll see you. And hopefully we don't have to wait that long, but maybe I'll see you at the Coach K Fantasy Camp, because that sounds fun. Even though I grew up in Kansas and I'm a Kansas guy, I might be able to show up at Cameron to take part in that. I would for you. I would do that for you.
That sounds like a deal. I would love that, man. But let's make that happen. But thank you for everything you do, and thank you to everyone at the Collective Genius.
Appreciate you, my friend. And obviously, if you'd like to be in the room with speakers, great keynote speakers like Alan Stein Jr., we've got a website for you to go to. It's explorecg.com. Again, explorecg.com. If you're a real estate investor full-time, we've got a tier for you, a community for you that can help you grow and scale your business. Fill out an application there. If it makes sense, we'll approve you. You'll have a consult with myself or someone on our team to see if this is the right fit for you, and we'll give you the next steps from there on out. Thank you for joining us on the Collective Genius podcast. We will see you next week.
New episodes every week. To learn more, visit explorecg.com. where real estate investors come to scale.